accessibility, and equity. How to create space for equity. How to create a space that shows your culture and your identity. So it is my pleasure to welcome a fabulous person, Ms. Kayla Stennett. We are thrilled to hear what she has to offer. So take it away, Ms. Stennett.
I'm actually going to take it away. I am Amy Jones, and I am tonight's MC for this event. It's an honor to have Kayla Stennett with us. We're looking for ways to make our city more accessible. And to do that, Kayla's name is one that everyone needs to know. She will help make businesses more accessible and inclusive for all of us in Birmingham. At Adjacent Space, we believe that we all deserve equal access and participation in the places where we live, work, and play. How do we accomplish that? It's not just a list that you can check off, it's a commitment. And this conversation is a great way to continue to push for transformative changes that benefit everyone. Thank you, Kayla, for joining us tonight. What should people know first about you and your business?
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Amy, and good evening, everyone. I am Kayla Stennett. I am the founder, CEO, and head marketing maven of Iron City Social. Iron City Social is a marketing firm based in Birmingham, Alabama, and we focus on empowering, supporting, and educating small businesses. We work with a plethora of clients throughout the Southeast, including some great businesses right here in Birmingham, like Brev Birmingham, Cahaba Brewing Company, and Wild Honey Flower Truck, just to name a few. And I am very excited to chat with all of you tonight about accessibility, equity, and inclusion when it comes to social media marketing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. We have some pre-existing questions that we're going to go ahead and chat with you about. We want this just to be a conversation. And then after that, we will see if there are any questions from our audience. Did that sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. So let's start at the very beginning. How did Iron City Social come about? What's your background?
Well, I do have a degree in marketing, economics, and entrepreneurship. After I graduated college, I tried a few different forms of marketing and levels of business, from working for like one of the largest corporations here in Birmingham to working for a mom and pop shop in Hoover. What I found was that I needed to create my own space for myself and for women of color in a cis male dominated industry. So that's when Iron City Social came to life.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you are thinking about social media, one of the biggest things that comes up, I think, is language and the kind of language that we use on social media, the word. We have gotten to a point where we need to really think through what we are putting out there. How do you think we can make language more equitable on social media?
I don't think people realize how powerful words can be, especially people outside of marketing. I'm trained, like this is marketing is my passion. Words are my passion. invoking feelings and change is my passion. So when it comes to marketing, I think it's very important to realize the power of the aesthetic, and to be quite honest, just the language that you're putting out there. I know, especially throughout COVID, there was a shift to where we leaned really hard into social media because we needed that community. And I think marketing throughout COVID is a perfect example of how language can become more equitable when it comes to social media, because you have to think of all the, not only passion, but the struggle that was shared throughout COVID, from friend to friend, brand to consumer, and so on and so forth. We saw a real shift to marketing that was more realistic, less bells and whistles, less perfection. And people craved that real content because they didn't want to feel bad about themselves. They didn't want to feel like they had to change to meet some impossible standard. Instead, they wanted to feel community and love that they could not get because of shelter in place. So I believe when it comes to creating more equitable marketing, it's about keeping not only your language, but the aesthetic, the look that you're putting out there, as authentic as possible.
Can you give maybe a real world example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so maybe more so on the extreme end that does sit a little bit outside of social media, but still was a very, very relevant conversation, was a ad that came out during COVID for postpartum recovery. And instead of it being a new mother running through a field of flowers, conquering motherhood, being gorgeous, doing it effortlessly, they showed a real woman recovering from giving birth to her child. And while she may love that child and she may find so much joy in being a mother, it's hard. It's difficult. There's a lot of ugly things that happen that aren't really discussed. And I thought it was very brave for that ad to be created and dispersed like it was, because while I am not a mother, I can certainly appreciate that struggle. And I can attest that I had no idea that it was such a struggle. And I would have never have known that if I hadn't seen an advertisement like that. So that's definitely a great example. Another example would be in the craft beer industry, and this specifically took place on social media. There was a call to action for companies to take stock of how they treated female women in the craft beer industry. Tons of testimony and stories came out from women in craft beer. And without really asking craft breweries to step up and do anything, they did. Even companies that didn't necessarily have any allegations brought towards them, they still stepped up and apologized for any complacency that they had had in this repeated sexism and sometimes abuse happening to women in craft beer. And I think that just goes to show you how much of a shift we've seen on social media and how powerful a tool it can be to create action, to create change, to give a forum for free-flowing conversation.
I think that what you said is extremely relevant and really resonate. I know that I'm a mom of two, and when I had my first, I went through postpartum depression, and it was really, really hard. And it was something that I had never even considered as a possibility. And so an ad like that, especially during a time like COVID, I think can really do a lot to make you feel left alone.
Exactly.
So awesome. So tell me what you're seeing since Black Lives Matter, since the protest and the movement. How are you seeing social media shift to kind of, are you seeing a shift that goes with the attitude of today?
I think it's different not only in the platforms that you look at, but also the different sides, like the creator side of things and the actual consumer side of things. In terms of Instagram, there definitely has been a shift with lifting up Black creators, brands dispersing more content that is inclusive, and encouraging the Black and the Brown community to feel more seen and feel like they are more so a part of the conversation. Now, on the flip side of that, sometimes, for example, with the Black squares that came out where they blacked out social media for a day, a lot of brands did that. And just to name Birmingham specifically, I believe the organization that's called Elevators called people out on it. They contacted, to my knowledge, every single business in Birmingham that voiced opinions or voiced support in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. And not only noted what they said they would do to encourage change within their company, but also followed up, not only 3 to 6 months later, but even a year later, to see if they had actually stood behind what they said. And I believe you can actually go to their website and see that information live as well. So from the consumer company side, definitely seen a shift in the right direction. But of course, there's still plenty of work to do. Now, when it comes to creators, specifically on platforms like TikTok, there's still so much to be done. There is a big backlash right now of white creators stealing Black and Brown creators' content and claiming it as they don't necessarily claim it as their own, but they don't give them credit. So there has been a big and very well-founded uproar on that platform, because not only are these huge influencers on TikTok using that content without crediting the source, but brands like Old Navy, I think Michelob Ultra, are taking that content that they've created and not, like, bare minimum should credit them, but don't give them any kind of payment or anything for that. And they use it and they have successful campaigns because of that. So there's certainly a lot of work to be done, especially since new platforms pop up every single day. But I am certainly encouraged by the shift that I've seen and the conversations that I've been able to have with my clients about how they can support the BLM movement.
Okay, awesome. So coming from this, coming from a deaf community background and kind of thinking through that, you know, what you were saying a lot of that sounded like kind of watching out for performative stuff rather than actual, actual advocacy. And I feel like that is something that we see a lot. You might see a hearing person who takes it upon themselves to learn a few phrases in sign language, and you will see this person be just, whoa, that's the coolest thing. And it's like, well, but that's an entire language and an entire community of people. And so I think that that's a parallel that we see a lot with cultural appropriation.
Yes, I always say it costs next to nothing to be empathetic and to really make people feel like they are just seen in your marketing. Like, for example, with Cahaba Brewing Company, before I started working with them, there was no, I could not see myself in their marketing. I couldn't pull up their Instagram and look at their feed and be like, that's a place I could see myself going to, because I didn't see myself.
Right.
And that's not only with Black women. My partner has a form of albinism that affects his vision, so he's legally blind. And there are certain things, not only with their marketing, but the experience that they depict when you come into the tap room, and making certain, just making people feel more comfortable, like me seeing myself in their marketing, and my partner being able to walk into the tap room and ask for a large format menu, so he doesn't have to ask the bartender or me to read off the menu to him. It's like small things like that that come from having conversations like this and being open and listening and not necessarily talking. That's the major piece that's not only missing with a lot of businesses marketing, but also just the business in general.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because I'm a member of the deaf community. I am a woman. In some ways, I find myself having to kind of battle against that glass ceiling. But in other ways, there's things that I have never considered, like what you just said about a large print menu. That's not something that I've ever really thought about. I would love to know your insight on, since your partner does deal with that, can you tell us about your partner's accessibility for social media?
My partner does not care for social media at all.
Oh, really?
We actually had a funny conversation today. As I was looking at my phone and answering emails, I said, I'm so tired of looking at my phone today. And he was like, I averaged 2 hours on my phone last week. I was like, that's awesome for you. I spend 10 hours a day on my phone probably. But going outside of his accessibility, just in general, there are several things that brands can do to make their social media more accessible. Adding descriptions of the pictures that you're using in post, captioning posts, adding meta tags or descriptions to the photos themselves, like saving them as a description of the photo itself. And I know, as someone who works in social media every single day, I definitely know that adding things like that to your plate may be impossible, which is why I definitely recommend work one thing in at a time. Like what we're focused on at Iron City Social right now is actively adding captions to all of our posts, or not posts, but videos, as well as vetting our website for its accessibility, from meta descriptions for our photos to is our text easily legible on our website? So there's 1,000 different things you can do, but don't feel overwhelmed by it. Start small, work in a thing or two a month, and just build upon that.
That's awesome. Would you have a particular website or resource that someone could take a look at in order to start working on their accessibility, or even go back and say, I've worked on this, what am I missing?
Yeah, I think later.com their blog is a fantastic resource for accessibility features. Not only do they specifically discuss how to make things more, or social media in general, more accessible, but they also go very in depth on different features or new features that platforms come out with. For example, captioning, especially when it came to stories or videos or things like that, were very difficult. But now that Instagram has released their free captioning tool, anyone can do it. Anybody can do it. So there's literally no reason that you should not be adding those captions to your videos. So subscribing to later.com's blog, I think, is a great place to start. And from there, it really just begs a conversation with your audience and paying attention to your customer base and what they're asking for in terms of need for accessibility.
I'm just taking a second to write down later.com blog so I can make sure that I also subscribe to that. Thank you for that. That's really, really helpful. Let me see. We have a really great comment. If you don't mind me bringing that in, we have someone named Desiree who said that sometimes she feels like she doesn't want to visit a place or support a business that is not deaf inclusive. She has actually reached out to creators or influencers in the past to ask them to add captions, and they've actually refused. So she showed them to unfollow those people. Obviously, there's not much you can do about someone else, but would you have any other tips for bringing that, advocating for yourself in that kind of space?
I think, especially with the creators that I follow, if someone were to reach out like that with a comment, they would not only make that change, but they would also call themselves out for it to make their audience aware of it. And I think the comment from that creator just goes more into the toxic nature of social media. Because while, especially throughout COVID, we found so much community in social media and saw so much great change, there's still a dark side to that. So while I'm very sorry that you had that experience with that creator, but for that creator, there are a dozen more out there who would welcome that feedback and actively work it into their content. Because at the end of the day, their audience is not only their bread and butter, but that's their family. You know, that's the community that they've chosen. That's the family that they've chosen. So I think when you find a creator that is truly passionate about what they do and wants to create an inclusive atmosphere for all of their audience, then that's who you want to follow. That's who you want to support.
I completely agree with that. I think that that's an excellent point. Do you feel like, and this might be a little bit, I don't know, might be a little bit of an edgy question to ask, but do you think that captions are kind of a trend right now? And if it is, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. But we're interested to hear your thoughts on that because it does feel like it kind of blown up.
I don't think it's necessarily a trend. I think it goes into the fact that a lot of creators and just businesses and people in general were noticing that they needed to make their content more accessible. It was much more difficult before Instagram came out with this caption feature because you would have to go through and either type out your captions or pay for your captions to be added. But honestly, I think what really blew it up was Instagram making that move and adding that free caption service. And Facebook does the same thing when you upload a video as well. But Instagram goes as far as to allow you to save the video after you add the captions so you can disperse it to other platforms if you choose. So yeah, it made it much more accessible for everyone to do. It made it easier, it made it less expensive. So it's really a matter of why wouldn't you use it if this tool was there?
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So what do you think needs to be improved on social media in order to allow more divergent voices to be seen and heard?
I think we need to keep having conversations like this. I know that we need to lift up creators that not only create content that's more equitable and accessible, but creators that need things like this. You know what I mean? Like people that are deaf, people that are blind, like people with disabilities in general, they need to be seen because it's a lot easier to have these conversations and authentic, honestly, when people that were creating these things are a part of the conversation. You know, I think that's where companies get it wrong. And that's where these social media platforms have gotten it wrong a lot of times, is they're not making everyone a part of the conversation. And it's not difficult. You just have to ask and sit back and listen and then put that into action.
Well, it's kind of like Hamilton, you know, you have to be in the room where it happened. And so many times, the people that are having a hard time being heard are the people that are not in the room. And when you have to depend on someone in the room to speak up for you, you certainly can't always count on that.
Exactly.
So to that point, how would you encourage people to start creating? Say someone wants to, a deaf person, a blind person, whoever, actually want to become a creator, where should they start?
The great news is that it's easier now than it ever has been before. As I mentioned before, there's been a huge shift to less polished, more relatable content. So gone are the days that you have to go out and have a professional photo shoot and video shoot to be a creator. Platforms like TikTok have made it much easier with their editing tools to slice together a video and create content. I think the most important part here is to establish an identity for yourself. If you establish that identity and you keep your content consistent and you're authentic, your audience will find you. These social media platforms will make it so that they do, because at the end of the day, they want consumers to stay on these platforms. But as I always say, the hardest part is getting started. So just take that leap make that first post, do that first TikTok video or dance, and just be brave and get out there.
What resources would you recommend for someone who might want to read up a little bit or watch a couple of videos about TikTok or Instagram or any of the social media sites?
I once again love Later.
Okay.
Yeah, their blog is very to the point. And at the same time, they go very in depth on not only different features of platforms and platforms themselves, but also different techniques you can use to boost your following and boost engagement.
Awesome. What challenges have you experienced? Or, I don't know that. Yes, I guess that's good. So you work with your own client. Have you encouraged them to make their social media more equitable? And what challenges have you run into when doing that?
I'm going to use Cahaba as an example again, and I'm not trying to beat up on this client. They are one of my favorite clients to work with because I love craft beer. But I think the biggest challenge in making their social media more accessible was starting that conversation. I felt like I could not, it wasn't really my duty to approach them about it. It was more so their job to ask the question and I give them the answer. And since the BLM movement, I have seen a lot of progress when it comes to Cahaba because they ask that initial question, what can we do to support this movement? What can we do to make everyone feel like they are more welcome in our tap room? And keep in mind that all of the changes and suggestions that have been made didn't necessarily come from me. We convened just a panel of people within the Black and brown people within the craft beer industry, and had a very open and honest discussion about what the craft beer community here in Birmingham could do to create more accessible, a more welcoming, a more diverse space. And that stemmed from my partner joining the conversation and expressing some of his problems with the space at Cahaba and how some things weren't as accessible to him. And so that conversation has evolved into not only including people of color, but also different people that love craft beer, love it, but don't necessarily see themselves in a place like that on their social media, in their marketing, aren't necessarily comfortable in their space. So the hardest part was starting that conversation, but now we're at a place where we're very comfortable voicing our opinions and feeling like we are going to be heard. And I think that makes all the difference.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see where that's coming from. You know, with you, you're a business owner. And so I can understand in that arena why you felt like, okay, maybe you felt like this is my client. I'm going to let them approach this. But if you have maybe someone in the deaf community, the blind community, another race who that's not really their situation, they need to actually advocate for themselves in that kind of arena. how would you recommend they maybe try to go about that?
Honest, that would be, they would need to reach out and start that conversation. With a lot of clients, sometimes I'll just get messages on their Instagram and someone from a community that's not necessarily represented and can't really access the content the way that they need to will ask that question. And it's all about coming from a place of just love, if that makes sense, not necessarily feeling attacked, but coming from a place where you want to understand, you want it to be more equitable, you want it to be more accessible. So while I know that it can be very hard to reach out and start that conversation, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to know unless you tell them.
That makes sense. Do you feel like social media can be a way to start that conversation if someone perhaps is not comfortable doing that in person? Do you think
Yes.
dropping, sliding into the DM as the case? I'm sorry. Do you think that can be a way to start that conversation and get that going?
I think that's a perfect way to start the conversation. Honestly, that and emailing them are probably going to be some of the best ways, because you do have to keep in mind that sometimes brands don't have someone like me that's minding their social media. So they might miss your message. They're not intentionally ignoring you whatsoever. They just don't have a dedicated person for that. So emailing them or messaging them, sliding into their DMs is going to be, I think, some of the best ways to contact them, because I don't think, especially taking into consideration whatever disability you do have, I don't think calling them is going to be the best thing to do, because somebody random is probably going to pick up the phone. It's not necessarily going to be a person that can answer your question or really help you with whatever you're bringing up to the business. So sending a message or an email, eventually that conversation is going to get started with the right person, and it's not going to be on you to kind of wait for that, if that makes sense.
Yes, that made perfect sense. So I hope it's okay. Desiree has another question for you, and this is pretty great. She says that sorry, I'll move that over here. She says that she's starting out as a deaf blogger and a TikTok creator. Most of her content is about deaf struggle, deaf motherhood, her daily life, grief, and storytelling in ASL. Are there other resources that you might have that you think would be helpful for her and others in her situation? I know you've already referenced Later. She's wondering, what can she do to show her authenticity? Sorry, I think I said that right. She's just wondering what she can do to kind of set herself apart from the millions of other users out there.
Right. So there's several different things you can do. Like in terms of actual content creation, to give you insight into what we do here at Iron City Social, is we attack content in 3 different ways. For some, we either follow a prompt. For example, for a wild honey flower truck, we essentially we're going to post about flowers, we're going to post about the studio, we're going to post about the flower truck, and we're going to post about events, and we're going to post something really funny. That's what every single piece of content that we make for them feeds from, and it goes exactly in that order with every single thing that we make. Other clients, on the other hand, we do what we call kind of like a monthly marketing prompt, where we not only look over the calendar for specific holidays that we can use to inspire content, we set a theme for content. For example, not only this month's theme, but this quarter's theme for Iron City Social is the social struggle. So we're diving into different just struggles that people have when they come to social media. And the last way we create content is it is completely off the cuff. We don't plan anything. We're not following any themes. We open up the app and make a post. I think when it comes to creating authentic content, it's very easy to overthink it. And while my personality is I want it as planned out as I possibly can get it, honestly, when I'm writing posts for Iron City Social, I follow the prompts, but I take inspiration from what's happened to me, both personally and professionally in the last week, especially when it comes to writing our email newsletter, because that's how I know how to be authentic. You know, it's kind of planned, but it's kind of not at the same time. So I know it's very hard not to get into that stringent, like, I have to be authentic, but who am I kind of thing, you know? It's kind of like when someone asks you, tell me about yourself, and you're like, you don't know what to say. But that's what being authentic on social media is. It's showing every part of you and every piece of you, and feeling no shame, of course, feeling some vulnerability, but feeling a lot of power in that too. I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, let me know.
There's an old quote about writing that I love. I was a journalist. You writing is easy. You just sit down at a typewriter, open a vein, and bleed. And that sounds like where you're going with this social media thing. You're like, TikTok's easy. just open a vein and bleed on TikTok, but don't actually do that because that would not be okay.
Yeah, that's with the real content creators, the ones that aren't necessarily selling that faux lifestyle. That's what they do. They are very vulnerable, very open, and really pour themselves into this business that they've created.
So what are some of the barriers that you have seen from your experience or from other people of color who are trying to break barriers in social media or as content creators? I know appropriation is probably one of those things, as we've talked about. Are there other things that you can think of?
I definitely think education is a barrier when it comes to social media, because while some posts go viral and we have no idea why, it's what we call a unicorn post. It does it. But at the same time, there's a lot of technique and education that comes into play, even for content creators, when it comes to marketing. And that it's not that the information isn't readily accessible. It's that they don't know that it's out there. It's not the kind of thing you find with a simple Google, because like it's so saturated with everyone putting out their personal opinion, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, on how to be successful when it comes to social media. So I think finding a mentor or a local marketing business to just lean on, and that will openly have those conversations with you, is another barrier. And I think it has a lot to do with feeling seen as well, because someone that's Black or brown may not necessarily want to approach someone white and ask them how they've done it. So that's, I think, appropriation of Black and brown content and just barriers to education and growth are the main things that are really holding content creators of color and with disabilities, for that matter, into entering like this industry.
See, so right now, so many people are experiencing burnout, isolation. They want to be connected to people, but it's been a year and a half and they're not sure how comfortable they are with that. I know that we have seen recently lots of stories about how social media can actually sometimes be an impediment for burnout or for negative self-esteem. I think we've all seen that lately with Facebook and Instagram, especially being spotlighted. Have you seen any way that people can use social media, especially to connect, to get those feelings of positivity, where social media can be a really strong positive influence for people?
I think a ton of people found that with Facebook groups and with TikTok last year. Of course, Instagram was still in play, but a lot of times it is harder to make that real connection on Instagram since there's no way to really work within that group format. I know, just for example, through COVID, a lot of people set up trade groups on Facebook where they were literally just trading everyday items like toilet paper and food and things like that. Yeah, so it was a valuable resource in a lot of communities because it was not so much, hey, I'm out of toilet paper, I can't find any. Does anyone in the community have something? It was more so, I've lost my job and I can't afford to buy this. Can anyone help me? Type of situation. So I think like Facebook was big for that throughout COVID. And I know I found a lot of community in Facebook groups as well for different reasons. And with TikTok, I think TikTok in the format that you create content made becoming a content creator more accessible for a lot of people, because you have to consider the fact that it's an all-on-one platform when it comes to content creators. They can record a video on their phone, slice it up, stitch it together, put music to it, and send it out. You didn't have to have a video camera or a mic or anything like that to get content out there. You could just do it. So with TikTok, I think it created visibility for a lot of niche members of the community that weren't seeing themselves on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, but they could more so easily dive into, like people say it all the time, like, I don't know, the LGBTQ side of TikTok, or just whatever side of TikTok really resonates with you,
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to tell you, Desiree said thank you. You were, she got a lot out of that answer. So thank you for doing that and
Good.
elaborating on that. So, we've got about 10 minutes left. We'd love to hear more about what kind of services Island City Social provides and how people can contact you if they want to follow up with you beyond this.
Yeah, so we are a full service marketing firm. We help clients with everything from social media marketing to website design to just general consulting and coaching services. What I pride myself on when it comes to this business is the fact that we have tried to price our services at an affordable rate, which is why we offer the coaching and consulting services, because it's more so a way for you to have someone to lean on when it comes to executing your marketing, coming up with ideas and things like that. But it's flexible enough to fit into your budget. So what I would suggest is to go to our website and just look around, get a feel for us. If that doesn't work for you, you can definitely email me at Kayla with a K at ironcitysocial.com. And I know I say iron with such a Southern drawl, and I have tried so hard to work myself out of that, but it's iron, like iron, not iron. Yeah. But yeah, look us up, follow us on social media.
I don't think anyone here is mind at all. I definitely don't think most people here care about your accent. I will just say that. So I wouldn't worry about that. But we have Beth back to wrap things up. I don't think we've got any other audience questions. So for myself, Kayla, thank you so much for the conversation. I have enjoyed every minute.
Great. It was so nice chatting with you, Amy.
Oh, all right. This was a fantastic discussion about social media and marketing and branding. Thank you so much. We have so many things to keep in mind to share with our local community. So I just want to say our closing remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amy, for being willing to take over for Trey. We were sorry that Trey wasn't able to attend, but next time, you know, you're always welcome. Thank you, Kayla, for being willing to spend time with us and share your knowledge. Very much appreciated. So we have 3 interpreters we like to special thanks to. We have Dean, Jasmine, and Dawn. So thank you for giving up your time to sign and voice for the community, for both the deaf community and the hearing community. We're here together. So good work, guys. And then I wanted to share that if you want to learn more about how to create accessible social media, you know, if you're wondering how to help foster equity, there are a few different creators you can follow on Instagram. So I'm going to give you a few names. I'm not able to list them all, but I want to highlight a few. One is definitely novel life. I'm reading from my phone and it's very tiny, so bear with me. My glasses aren't, you know, helping out as much as they could. So follow them. Later Media as well. So we have a few that we wanted to highlight. And one that, you know, latermedia.com, you know, that's a great one. You can learn more about how to create accessibility, how to make sure that what the content you create allows inclusion for all. And I wanted to, if you're looking for captions, a good company is AI Media, 3Play, Rev, or if you want to learn how to caption on your own, which in the deaf community SA, we so much appreciate that. You can follow Capwing. Of course, you can follow us on Adjacent Space and Iron City social media. For more tips coming up in the future, we're constantly providing valuable content to the community. So thank you again for our wonderful folks we had here. This has been very, very much a pleasure. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and goodbye.